You've seen the ads. You know the ones. Flashy cars, private jets, and a guru in a silk suit promising you the secret to making six figures by next month while you sleep. It's loud, it's fast, and frankly, it's designed to drain your bank account while they fill theirs. But have you ever stopped to notice the real titans of wealth? The people who actually control billions don't spend their days hunting for the next get-rich-quick hack. They don't talk about overnight miracles. Instead, they obsess over things that sound, quite frankly, boring. They talk about tracking pennies, negotiating utility bills, and building systems that function like clockwork. So why the disconnect? Why are you being sold a dream of fast cash while the ultra-wealthy are quietly stacking their fortune through the most unsexy habits imaginable? Maybe it's because the truth isn't loud. It doesn't fit into a 15-second viral clip, but it does work. In this video, we're going to peel back the curtain on the hustle culture lie. We aren't talking about working yourself to the bone for a side hustle that burns you out. We're going to look at the invisible architecture of wealth, the 50 micro habits that actually build empires, not just exhaustion. If you've ever felt like you're running faster just to stay in the same spot, this is the reality check you need. Let's get into it. If working a side hustle were the golden ticket to financial freedom, why are we seeing a record-breaking crisis of exhaustion among young professionals? It's a paradox that's rarely discussed. We've been conditioned to believe that if your bank account is hurting, the only solution is to work more hours. You drive for a rideshare app on Friday nights, you design graphics on Saturday mornings, and you pack every single gap in your schedule with a secondary income stream. You're trading your finite, most precious resource, time, for a few extra $100. But let's look at the math, because the math doesn't lie. This is what we call linear income. You put in 1 hour, you get paid for 1 hour. When you stop working, the money stops flowing. It's the oldest trap in the book. You aren't building a business, you're building a second job that's likely to burn you out within 18 months. And here is the brutal reality. The average side hustler is barely clearing enough to cover the rising cost of living, let alone building the kind of net worth that provides true security. If side hustles are supposedly the ultimate shortcut, why are the people who hustle the hardest often feeling the most trapped? The answer lies in a fundamental misunderstanding of how the wealthy actually operate. See, the middle-class mindset is obsessed with earning. It's obsessed with the gross figure at the bottom of the paycheck. But the wealthy mindset is obsessed with systems. They aren't looking for a way to add another hour to their day. They're looking for a way to make the 24 hours they already have work 10 times harder for them. They understand that true wealth is not about what you earn, it's about what you keep and how that capital is deployed. Think about the difference between your approach and theirs. You are likely approaching your finances with a hustle harder mentality. You think the solution to a $1,000 problem is to work 10 more hours. But what if the solution wasn't adding more work? What if the solution was a series of automated, boring, invisible micro-habits that eliminate the need for extra work entirely? When you spend your weekends grinding, you're not just losing your downtime, you're losing your mental bandwidth. You're hitting what we call decision fatigue. By the time you finish your full-time job and your weekend side hustle, you have zero energy left to audit your finances, read about investment strategies, or even cook a healthy meal. You end up paying for convenience, takeout, subscription services you forgot to cancel, expensive impulse buys because you're too tired to plan ahead. You're literally paying to keep yourself exhausted. It's a cycle of chaos. You make a little extra money from the hustle, and you spend it just as fast to keep functional. The side hustle becomes a treadmill. You're running faster, sweating more, and yet, looking at your bank account, you realize you haven't moved an inch. Now, contrast this with someone who treats their financial life like a machine. They don't rely on a second job. They don't rely on surge pricing or Fiverr gigs. They rely on the silent power of compounding. They've automated their investments the day after payday, so the money disappears before they ever have the chance to spend it. They've negotiated their fixed costs so that every month they're automatically saving hundreds of dollars without lifting a finger. This isn't just about saving money, it's about reclaiming your mental space. When you don't have to worry about the chaos of your bank account, you have the capacity to focus on your primary career, your professional development, or simply building a life that doesn't need to be escaped from. The wealthy don't build wealth by grinding their weekends away. They build it by optimizing the architecture of their daily life. They understand that the richest person isn't the one who works the most hours. It's the one who has constructed a system where their money works for them even when they're sleeping, playing basketball, or just reading a book on a Sunday afternoon. So before you pick up that next freelance gig or sign up for another side hustle, I want you to ask yourself, are you actually building wealth, or are you just buying yourself a more expensive version of exhaustion?
It's time we stop glorifying the grind and start talking about the systems that actually move the needle. Because once you move from a linear mindset to an exponential one, the game changes completely. And trust me, the mechanics of that change are far more interesting and far less exhausting than anything you'll find on a gig work app. We're about to dive into exactly how that architecture works and why it's more powerful than any hustle you could ever dream up. Now, let's talk about the mindset shift that actually separates the wealthy from everyone else. When you hear micro habits, your immediate reaction might be to cringe. You think of coupon clipping, counting every cent, and living a life of deprivation. You look at the wealthy and think they're obsessive, cheap, or just miserable. You think, why would someone with millions care about a few dollars here or there? Why negotiate a utility bill? Why pack a lunch? Here is the twist. The middle class looks at these habits and sees sacrifice. The ultra-wealthy look at these same habits and see investment. They aren't obsessed with these habits because they are stingy. They are obsessed because they are architects. When you are building a skyscraper, you don't ignore the quality of the individual bricks just because they're small. You know that if the foundation is flawed, the entire structure eventually collapses. For the wealthy, every micro-habit is a strategic control mechanism. It's a toggle switch that allows them to eliminate unnecessary friction and risk from their financial lives. When you don't track your spending, or when you don't pay attention to your subscription drift, or when you don't automate your savings, you are essentially flying blind. You are allowing financial entropy to take over. And just like in physics, if you don't add energy to a system to keep it ordered, it naturally descends into chaos. For the average person, that chaos looks like credit card debt, late fees, and a sinking feeling that no matter how much you earn, there's never enough left over at the end of the month. The wealthy refuse to live in that chaos. They treat their money with the precision of a professional athlete managing their performance. Every dollar has a purpose. Every recurring expense is audited. Every investment is automated. This isn't about being cheap. It's about being calculated. It's about ensuring that your capital is working for you, not leaking out of the seams of your lifestyle. Let's be blunt. Most of you are being sloppy. You're sloppy with your subscriptions, you're sloppy with your credit card APRs, and you're sloppy with your taxes. And then you turn around and blame the economy or the housing market or your employer for not paying you enough. But the truth? You're losing thousands of dollars a year in leaks that you don't even have the awareness to identify. When a multi-millionaire negotiates their car insurance, they aren't doing it because they're desperate for $100. They're doing it because they've learned that a dollar saved through a micro-habit is worth more than a dollar earned through a side hustle. Why? Because the dollar you earn is taxed. It costs you time. It costs you energy. It costs you wear and tear on your car. But the dollar you saved through negotiation, that is pure profit. It hits your account with zero overhead. This is the architect mindset. You stop viewing yourself as a consumer who just pays whatever the bill says, and you start viewing yourself as a business owner who scrutinizes every line item. Most of the people watching this video are currently living in a state of financial drift. You're just going with the flow, letting the marketing companies, the banks, and the subscription services dictate how much of your life's work you hand over to them. You call it living, but it's actually just being a passive participant in your own bankruptcy. When you start implementing these micro-habits, the 24-hour rule on impulse buys, the monthly subscription audit, the automatic investment escalation, you are doing something radical. You are drawing a boundary. You are saying, my money is not for you to take, it is for me to grow. The reason the wealthy are obsessed with the small stuff is because they understand the reality of scale. If you can't manage $100, you will never manage 100,000. If you can't control your impulse to buy something you don't need, you will never control your impulse to gamble with your retirement savings when the market gets volatile. It's not about the money itself, it's about the discipline of the system. The wealthy have built a system that functions perfectly whether they're motivated or not. They don't need willpower because they've built guardrails. They don't need hustle because they've built automation. And that, my friends, is exactly why they stay wealthy while everyone else is still busy looking for the next secret to quick cash. But there's a deeper layer to this. It's not just about saving a few bucks on coffee, it's about something far more valuable, your mental bandwidth. And that is exactly what we need to break down next, because if you're still listening, you've realized that this isn't just about saving a few bucks on coffee, it's about something far more valuable, your mental bandwidth. There is a psychological phenomenon called decision fatigue. Every single day, your brain has a limited reservoir of cognitive energy. Every choice you make, what to wear, what to eat, whether to check your bank account, whether to pay that bill now or later, depletes that reservoir.
By the time you get home from a long, exhausting day of work, your decision battery is essentially at zero. And what happens when you're mentally drained? You stop making strategic decisions and you start making impulsive ones. That is exactly when the lifestyle creep sets in. Lifestyle creep is the silent assassin of financial freedom. It happens when your income grows, but instead of aggressively funneling that surplus into assets, you unconsciously raise your standard of living to match your new pay grade. You upgrade the car, you get the better apartment, you dine out more, you upgrade your subscriptions. Suddenly, you're making more money, but you aren't any closer to freedom. You've just built a more expensive cage. The wealthy avoid this trap by automating everything that can be automated. Think about it. If your investments are automatically pulled from your account the second your salary hits, you never have to make the choice to save. You've offloaded that decision to a system. If your bills are on auto pay, you aren't wasting mental energy tracking due dates. You've offloaded that to a system. By removing the choice from the equation, the wealthy protect their brain power for the only decisions that actually matter, the high leverage ones. Should I invest in this company? Should I scale this business? How do I allocate my capital to maximize returns over the next decade? These are the decisions that move the needle. You cannot make those calls if your brain is clogged with the trivial stress of wondering if you have enough money to cover your rent next week. When you control your micro habits, you aren't just saving money, you are preserving your focus. You're ensuring that your most valuable asset, your mind, isn't being held hostage by small, avoidable financial anxieties. Consider the average American household. They spend hours every month just managing the wreckage of their own lack of systems. Late fees, overdraft charges, recalculating budgets, stress-induced shopping after a bad day. That is not just a financial cost, that is a human cost. It is a theft of your time and your life's potential. The micro-habit framework, in its essence, is a way of de-risking your existence. Every time you negotiate a rate, you're de-risking your monthly overhead. Every time you automate your 401k or your index fund contribution, you're de-risking your long-term retirement. Every time you set a limit on gift spending, you're de-risking your social obligations. You see, the goal is not to live a life of scarcity, it's to live a life of high efficiency. When you master these small, boring, repetitive actions, you create a financial floor that you cannot fall below. You create a structure that holds you up even when life gets messy, even when the market drops, even when you have a bad month at work. Most people are terrified of the idea of systems because they think it sounds robotic. They want to be spontaneous with their money. But let me tell you, there is nothing spontaneous about being broke. There is nothing free about living paycheck to paycheck. The most spontaneous people I know are the ones with the most rigid financial systems because they've automated the boring stuff so they can afford to be truly free with the rest of their time and resources. So, if you're serious about building wealth, you need to stop thinking about your money as something you manage when you have the energy. You need to start building an architecture that manages your money for you. You need to identify the leaks, plug them with automation, and let the compound interest do the heavy lifting while you focus on what really matters: your health, your family, and your craft. We've covered the shift in mindset, we've covered the trap of the hustle, and we've seen why the wealthy are obsessed with these microsystems. Now, the final piece of the puzzle is putting this into action, because understanding this is one thing, but living it is how you actually carve that canyon. Let's bring it all home and show you exactly what this looks like when it all comes together. So, where does this leave you? We have to stop viewing wealth as a sudden event, a stroke of luck, or a massive win from a viral idea. Wealth is not an explosion, it is an erosion. It is the river carving the canyon, slow, quiet, relentless, and impossible to stop. If you can't control the small details of your financial life today, you will never be prepared to hold on to the larger ones tomorrow. The micro habits we talked about today aren't just chores, they are the bedrock of your future autonomy. You've spent enough time running on the treadmill of hustle culture, convinced that burnout is the price of admission to a better life. But burnout isn't a badge of honor, it's a sign that your system is broken. I'm not telling you to stop working hard, I'm telling you to start working smart. I'm telling you to stop trading your life for linear paychecks and start building a machine that grows your wealth in the background 24 hours a day while you focus on living the life you are actually working for. You have a choice to make right now. You can look at the next 5 years and decide to spend them in a state of constant exhaustion, chasing pennies to cover the bills, perpetually stuck in the same position. Or you can spend those same 5 years systematically building the architecture of your own independence. You can choose to be the architect, or you can choose to be the laborer. Which one are you going to pick? I want to hear where you stand. Are you ready to trade the hustle for the system? What is the very first micro habit you are going to automate this week? Drop a comment below and let's keep this conversation going. If you found value in this, don't just watch it and forget it. Hit that share button with someone who needs to hear this truth today. Stop grinding, start building, and for heaven's sake, stop being surprised by your own bank account. Take control. It's the only way out.